Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. OBS Studio reconnecting. Greetings, superior beings, greetings, supreme being. We are all the human race. Our common enemy is death. Welcome on Perfect Society. I'm Ulrich Hofman and this is the broadcast. UN Security Council on Ukraine, UK threatens sanctions for comprehensive cyber attack? So the reason I think that is that Klaus Schwab warned for a comprehensive cyber attack. Basically it was a sort of prediction. And of course we've seen Israel hosted a cyber pandemic exercise simulating a cyber attack on global financial system with 10 countries. The IMF, World Bank and BIS. So let's take a look at that. This was published on sociable.co. The Sociable collective strength simulated attack on the financial sector is a continuation of global efforts to prepare the public and private sectors for a coming cyber pandemic that would wreak havoc over all of society. Perspective. And recent news we can see with DuckDuckGo. Also Brave has a search engine, but with Opera GX when I add that I cannot use that as a default search engine somehow. So that's totally wicked, or what do you call it? It's weird. So how are they gonna build big, better Bill Gates's container cities, aka smart cancer cell phone cities? To do that you'd have to demolish the old cities, which they've started to do in Great Britain already. Councils can order homes and cars demolished under the guise of COVID-19 spread prevention. And I've published about that in previous broadcasts as well. Councils with a C instead of an S, perhaps. Councils can bulldoze contaminated homes and crush cars as a last resort under new laws to stop second wave of coronavirus. Daily Mail Co. UK, 5th of August 2020. That's when I published about it as well, a little while after that, probably. So, they can have 3 steps to reduce the global population to 500 million. One is the, quote, comprehensive cyber attack, unquote. Klaus Schwab talked about. But of course it's unlikely that one hacker could do an attack that would take out the internet, electricity, power systems, the things Klaus Schwab talked about in that video, which you all have seen probably, and otherwise it's easy to find on various platforms. So it's unlikely, if not impossible, that one hacker could do an attack on the global financial system, as we see here in this article that I also published about a while ago. So it's about a cyber attack on the global financial system. So there are several options. I doubt if you could call an EMP attack, an electromagnetic pulse attack, a cyber attack. But how would they take out that global financial system to introduce the cashless society? And of course, if the internet is gone, then crypto is gone as well. So gold and silver remains, and they only do business in gold bullion, as we know. And of course, they may have bought more crypto than anyone else, then they can control the cryptocurrency markets. They can make it go up or down by buying or selling lots of crypto. And perhaps they don't want privacy coin, only surveillance coins, the gov coin. So to achieve that, we can expect one of these three things. A cyber attack on the global financial system, on the internet. The kill switch has been implemented before when there is a lot of protest. Then you can see it in the wiki article about the kill switch, which means they switch off the internet, perhaps also other communications, so the people are easier to divide and conquer, basically. That's their technique. Easier, they're divided by it, basically. Now we can still communicate via internet, against our cell phones and normal telephones. But if they turn that off, that becomes impossible. Also, if there would be a cyber attack on the global financial system, they can't buy food anymore, they can't pay the rent anymore. All the money in the bank would be gone. Legally, they're required to only keep 3% of all that money in the bank. So most cryptocurrency, most fiat currency is fake. They only have 3% of that. So if everybody would run to the bank now to get the money out of the bank, they wouldn't have it. They would only have 3%. So that's definitely gone after that. Also after an EMP, their servers, their hard disks are erased. So how can anybody prove how much money they had in the bank? Anyway, that means people can't buy food anymore. And then the idea might be, then the government says, well, you'll get a basic income and everything. As long as you own nothing, you have to hand in all your possessions and your house. And after such an EMP attack, there can also be a possible invasion. So these are acts of war in reality. And Klaus Schwab made clear he thinks that a lot more people will die from this cyber attack than from COVID-19. What some call pandemic. So, the headlines: Ukraine crisis live, Russia and US face off at UN Security Council, UK threatens sanctions. So we'll be switching to that live. I'll have to switch this one. Does this thing that's United Nations Live. We'll switch to that. Or at least I'll switch to that, so you all can see it live. And then I'll give my comments, but first some more headlines. So The Guardian on MSN reported, that's longer than 7 minutes ago though, because I had to start up OBS, which takes a long time, Open Broadcaster software. Ukraine crisis live, Russia and US face off at UN Security Council. UK threatens sanctions. Why is that threatens? Isn't Novichok Putin threatening the world with his Ukraine fiasco? US close to Russia sanctions as Biden mulls options on Ukraine crisis live. We also see stuff in the UK Parliament, I think they call it. Oh, let's reload. This is on LBC. Boris Johnson updates MPs on Sue Gray Partygate report. Oh, that's something else. Okay, sorry. That's not. I thought it was about Ukraine, basically. Because I collected some data before this broadcast. Britain warns Russia of sanctions on oligarchs if Ukraine is invaded. But didn't he make clear that he wouldn't do that he's not planning that? US readies Russia sanctions as guardsmen train Ukraine military. So they shouldn't take any steps that could lead to such a cyber attack. And have they considered the option of letting Putin invade the Ukraine? Is that what the Ukrainian people want? If not, then what is he doing there? What is he trying to do? To invade another country? I think that's disgusting. Adolf Hitler also was about imperialism, about a new world order, a totalitarian regime. And many people have lost their lives in order for us, so we could be free people with rights, basic human rights. And we have banished totalitarianism. But we now see it return with medical tyranny. If you're not an advocate of medical freedom, you are an advocate of medical tyranny, like Adolf Hitler, Mao, Pol Pot, etc. And medical discrimination, medical apartheid. So if the jab would be effective, they'd be protected. There's no use for social distancing, the QR code, nor the corona health passport, if the jab would be effective. Because then they'd be protected, right? And otherwise, how dare you call it an effective jab? It's insane. US readies Russia sanctions as guardsmen train Ukraine military, New York Post. US and UK ready to punish Putin associates if Russia invades Ukraine. Russia is willing to go to war and incur sanctions over Ukraine, analysts warn. Russia-Ukraine conflict, UK targets those closely linked to Kremlin as US warns of mother of all sanctions, unquote. As US prepares mother of all sanctions, Amnesty warns of, quote, devastating consequences, unquote, should Russia invade Ukraine. Let's see. I will DuckDuckGo. Putin invading Ukraine, question mark. And then see what Putin said about this himself. Oh yeah, there's another thing I wanted to show you all. But first, this is Putin going to invade Ukraine, Harvard Gazette. Russia's aggression against Ukraine is backfiring. Russia is positioned to invade all of Ukraine, US says. President Vladimir Putin of Russia has deployed the troops and military hardware needed to invade all of Ukraine, the Pentagon's top leaders said on Friday. Putin tests a model for invading Ukraine, outwitting Biden. Russia insists it won't start a war as Ukraine seeks to ... CBS News. Ukraine's president asked Biden to tone down the rhetoric about a possible imminent Russian invasion. Why Putin wants to invade Ukraine. My father is in the room. 1 second, please.
Even bellen?
Nee, niet doen.
Waarom niet?
Dus omdat het onzin is... Even kijken hoor. Mijn microfoon doet het zo. Ja, mijn vader komt met een kraslot aan. En de vraag is dan, staat er op wat je gewonnen hebt? Want volgens mij is het onzin om je levenslang met die loterij mee te laten doen. Dus het is gewoon niet doen, niet bellen. Het is gewoon onzin. Dus dat soort dingen. That type of thing happens all the time. So that's my father with a lottery ticket basically, but it doesn't say he won anything with certainty, and then you have to play the lottery all the time, and elderly people can be very susceptible to that type of thing. Russia insists it won't start a war. CBS News, well, we can check that then. Putin afraid of backlash but may still invade Ukraine, CNBC. Why is Putin says Putin says Russia doesn't want war with Ukraine. Putin says ball in West scored on Ukraine. Putin says Russia wants security guarantees now. 1 month ago. Putin says West has not addressed key concerns in Ukraine. Putin says Russia doesn't want war with Ukraine but urges West to meet his demands quickly. Putin says Russia has, quote, nowhere to retreat, unquote, over Ukraine. But has he promised not to invade Ukraine or not? That's what it's about. Or does he just want to invade Ukraine but no war? Be the first to know, not now. Lavrov lauded the White House's written response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's demands that NATO pull its forces back from Russia's western borders and reject new members in the region. Well, that's unreasonable, isn't it, if Ukraine is an ally of the US? So they're not putting the troops in Russia. But the praise came at the expense of the NATO alliance itself. It was a pointed jab at the US-led transatlantic security alliance, which Putin views as a threat to Russia's power and influence in the region. That power has waned since the fall of the Soviet Union, and Putin is determined to prevent more ex-Soviet states like Ukraine from being folded under the NATO umbrella. The Ukrainians' most immediate concern is that Putin will opt for less overt aggression, smaller scale border incursions, or, quote, false flag, unquote, attacks that Moscow might use to accuse Ukraine's forces of an escalation. Kiev believes any Russian assault would likely be preceded by cyber attacks targeting the country's infrastructure, to create instability and erode confidence in Zelensky's government. Putin has already shown a preference for such tactics. That may be exactly what Russia wants. British intelligence has warned that Putin could try to exploit instability in Ukraine to reinstall a friendly government there. Since Putin's forces last invaded in 2014, so they've already done that, annexing the Crimean Peninsula, war has simmered between Ukrainian troops and Russian-backed separatists in the east of the country. Russian President Vladimir Putin gave final approval to legislation allowing him to hold office for 2 additional 6-year terms today, Monday, April 5th, giving himself the possibility to stay in power until 2036. EuroWeeklyNews.com, 5th of April 2021. Novchuk. Novichok Russian for New Boy is a series of binary chemical weapons developed by the Soviet Union and Russia between 1971 and 1993. They were designed as part of a Soviet program codenamed Foliant. Putin is a warmonger and has violated international law, committed massive war crimes in Chechnya, Donbass and Syria, violation of UN Charter, OSCE and many other international laws and treaties. Social Global Studies. Vladimir Putin, war criminal. During Putin's years in office, a series of Russian Democrats, journalists and opposition leaders have been killed in mysterious circumstances. Politico EU, 7th of January 2017. Putin violated 1994 Budapest Memorandum, to which Russia was a signatory, violated 1997 Ukraine-Russia Interstate Treaty. Social Global Studies again. Putin to receive Friends of Zion Award in Jerusalem, Jerusalem Post, January 23rd, 2020. Some call it Bolshevism 3.0. $16.5 million Europeans murdered in all 3 Holodomors. It's somewhere. Putin gives himself 100% pay raise. The Sydney Morning Herald, April 19th, 2004. Holodomor. Afflict death by hunger. Holodomor is a compound of the Ukrainian words holod, meaning hunger, and mor, meaning, quote, plague, unquote. The expression moriti holodom means, quote, to inflict death by hunger, unquote. Lenin established a Jewish regime. Blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't know about that. You'd have to check online. I was looking for another quote. They starved 9 to 10 million Ukrainians to death when they had food all around them, and when the Ukrainians tried to eat any, they were either clubbed to death, bayoneted, or shot. So they had food all around them, yet they starved them to death. So people can check that Holodomor. I can check it on Wiki also. It is a Wiki article. Perhaps it's best to read that intro from Wiki and then go to the UN if they're still there, but I think this is more important. We cannot control the outcome of their conversations.
The Holodomor, Ukrainian, Romanized, Holodomor, Ipe, Holodomor, 2, derived from Morty Holodom, to kill by starvation, a 345, also known as the Terror Famine 678, or the Great Famine, 9, was a famine in Soviet Ukraine from 1932 to 1933 that killed millions of Ukrainians. It was a large part of the wider Soviet famine of 1932 to 1933. The term Holodomor emphasizes the famine's man-made and allegedly intentional aspects such as rejection of outside aid, confiscation of all household foodstuffs and restriction of population movement. As part of the wider Soviet famine of 1932 to 1933 which affected the major grain-producing areas of the country, millions of inhabitants of Ukraine, the majority of whom were ethnic Ukrainians, died of starvation in a peacetime catastrophe unprecedented in the history of Ukraine. 10. Since 2006, the Holodomor has been recognized by Ukraine 11, and 15 other countries as a genocide of the Ukrainian people carried out by the Soviet government. 12. Early estimates of the death toll by scholars and government officials varied greatly. 13. A United Nations joint statement signed by 25 countries in 2003 declared that 7 to 10 million perished. 14. Current scholarship estimates a range of 4 to 7 million victims. 15. With more precise estimates ranging from 3.316 to 5 million. 17. According to the findings of the Court of Appeal of Kyiv in 2010, the demographic losses due to the famine amounted to 10 million. With 3.9 million direct famine deaths, and a further 6.1 million birth deficits. 18. Whether the Holodomor was genocide is still the subject of academic debate, as are the causes of the famine and intentionality of the deaths. 19-20-21, some scholars believe that the famine was planned by Joseph Stalin to eliminate a Ukrainian independence movement. 10-22. Others suggest that the man-made famine was a consequence of Soviet industrialization.
Forbes.com has this article, Why Putin Won't Invade Ukraine, December 6, 2021. Putin's main objective seems to be dissuading Kiev from joining NATO, a move that could position Western forces close to the Russian heartland. But has he ever said that he will not invade Ukraine again? So in this other article that I read, they claim that he did it once before. Russia could again invade Ukraine as it did in 2014. And that's cbsnews.com. So why wouldn't he do that again when he did it before? Why does Forbes think that there won't be one when Klaus Schwab has predicted a comprehensive cyber attack? Can that occur in any other way than this negative stuff with the Ukraine? So how else could they make us all own nothing and be happy without that cyber attack on the global financial system and the internet, etc.? Perhaps they don't want a world war, they don't want the Earth to spin off axis, they don't want the Earth to split. Scalar weapons have made nuclear weapons obsolete. We can blow ourselves up hundreds of times. So they want to prevent mutually assured destruction, and theoretically they've made some deal already. So then we own everything, we, the New World Order, and the rest of the people own nothing and have to rent it back from us. A great culling of the, what they call human herd, the useless eaters, everybody that's not a billionaire basically. Hopefully President Biden will be able, based on the David Spangler quote, it's everybody that's not a Freemason, that hasn't taken the Luciferian oath, will not enter the quote New Age, unquote, won't be part of the New World Order. So it's possible they're going to kill off all non-Masons, basically. Based on that quote, how else can there only be people that have taken that oath? Some people would refuse it, of course, because of their religion. Putin's current popularity within his nation is high by Western standards, but low compared with earlier in his tenure. So there are no promises that he made that indicate that he's not planning to invade the Ukraine again, right? So I can search on this stuff while we switch to the live UN meeting, Security Council on Ukraine.
Different fora, along with sending own clear messages. Ukraine is not going to launch military offensive neither in Donbass, nor in Crimea, nor anywhere else. Ukraine sees no alternative to peaceful resolution of the ongoing conflict and restoration of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. Yet we also see a surge in Russian disinformation campaign, including false accusations of Ukraine plotting a military attack. This is not going to happen. This is direct evidence of Russia's unwillingness to de-escalate and prepare to justify its possible further aggression. We are well aware of Russia's history of ploys and provocations, and we will do everything possible to prevent another Manila-type provocation by Russia. Once again, I have clear instructions from my government to reiterate today the absence of any aggressive intention, as well as Ukraine's strong commitment to peace. Today we have heard from the Russian side that they do not...
So of course I'm not going to take anybody that wears a lethal bacteria bucket choke napkin. Seriously, and I hope you all don't either. And the Luciferian United Nations, well, I've covered that in my previous broadcasts. What can I say?
Based on experience,
people can check the Lucis Trust, for example.
But only practical moves.
Was it formerly Lucifer Book Publishing Company or something?
Madam President, Ukraine strongly rejects any attempt to use the threat of force as an instrument of pressure to make Ukraine and our partners accept illegitimate demands. There is no room for compromise on principle issues.
United Nations of Knights, basically. The Lucis Trust's publishing company was founded in the early 1920s as the Lucifer Publishing Company. The Lucis Trust says that the name was probably chosen to honor Lucifer Wiki. And old versions of wiki articles can be retrieved with catch pages. I'm not using headphones, so I cannot hear what they're saying when I'm also using my mic at the same time, because then there would be feedback, and I think that sounds unprofessional, so... But okay, this is the Ukraine speaking, so then I want to hear what they say as well. If he mentions that Putin apparently invaded the Ukraine once before in 2014, according to CBS News, Russia could again invade Ukraine as it did in 2014. White House has warned, supposedly.
His Russian counterpart. If Russia has any questions to Ukraine, it is better to meet and talk, not to bring troops to the Ukrainian borders and intimidate Ukrainian people. For Ukraine, the first priority today is to achieve a sustainable and unconditional ceasefire in Donbass. The ceasefire regime must be guaranteed, reliable, and on this basis, further steps can be taken. Intensification of the work of the Normandy format, including at the level of leaders of the four countries, is an important prerequisite for next steps towards lasting peace in Donbass. And we are ready to resume Normandy 4 talks in all formats. The recent political
so since Russia has a reserve internet, I think there must also be other measures when they do this, because it will also cost lives. It's an act of war. So they must already make clear what they're going to do if Russia does a cyber attack of any type.
That despite the Russian attempt to impede the briefing from being held,
to prevent that, of course,
Council and the wider UN membership have received
to come to a diplomatic solution that prevents the comprehensive cyber attack Klaus Schwab warned about. And it's possible they're doing the opposite. It's all part of a gigantic population reduction agenda, and that they're all Masons or whatever, and they're in on doing this to the global population.
Security Council responsibility to investigate any dispute or any situation which might lead to international friction or give rise to a dispute. After listening to the Russian ambassador today, I would like to ask how long Russia will pursue a clear attempt to push Ukraine and its partners into a Kafka trap. And still, I perhaps should acknowledge that it was important to hear the Russian envoy today, and yet I must end with what my foreign minister has recently said, and I quote, "If Russian officials are serious when they say they don't want a new war, Russia must continue diplomatic engagement and pull back military forces it amassed along Ukraine's borders and in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Diplomacy is the only responsible way," end of quote. Let's judge by actions, not by riddles and semantic puzzles. Thank you for your attention.
So that they have a reserve internet, Russia has a reserve internet. I base on the BBC article of the 24th of December 2019. Russia, quote, successfully tests, unquote, its unplugged internet.
On the unacceptable nature of resolving any conflict by force. We have made significant efforts to settle the conflict in Ukraine. Our country is still prepared to do everything possible to restore dialogue and mutual understanding in the region. There is no alternative to the Minsk agreements playing a key role in the peaceful settlement of the crisis. The negotiation process as part of the trilateral contact group and also the practical implementation of the agreements in the conflict zone of the domestic Ukrainian conflict will enable the peace process in Ukraine to get on a sustainable, positive track. The U.S. delegation proposing today's topic for consideration in the Security Council is yet another attempt to artificially whip up tension in the region purely as an instrument of political accusations. Such actions only heighten mistrust and in no way help to solve disagreements. Despite the concerns expressed frequently by representatives of the Republic of Belarus at international fora, negotiating fora and during bilateral contacts, the expansion of military powers on our western and southern borders not only is not ceasing, but rather it's becoming threatening in nature, despite our consistent calls for dialogue and cooperation, including regarding arms control. In fact, even more pressure is being exerted on our country by individual countries. Our proposals to return to negotiations are not being responded to by our Western partners. Incidentally, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that here we had a reference to the Budapest Memorandum. I do really urge you to read that document regarding the Republic of Belarus, and I would draw your attention to the promises in that document not to exert any coercive economic measures on Belarus and to remember the numerous packages of economic sanctions from individual states that have been imposed against us. Given the current difficult situation, the leaders of Belarus and Russia have taken the decision to conduct jointly activities to assess the preparedness of the armed forces of the two states to provide military security, given the commitments of our military political alliance. As part of these agreements, a decision has been taken in February this year to conduct a verification of the responsiveness of our forces of our alliance. The main aims of this verification of the military forces is to assess the preparedness and capability of our military command and control, to conduct joint exercises to guarantee security of our allied state, to develop joint measures to eradicate the threat on the borders of our allied state, including caused by the migration crisis and the need to stabilize the humanitarian situation, organizing the defense and protection of strategic...
So we also see Fox News, Russia will hit US with cyberattack if sanctioned, so the idea is not sanctioning them if they don't invade, de-escalating as much as possible, and coming with a comprehensive solution plan to prevent a world war, which is another option, of course. And these are acts of war, a cyber attack, for example, or an EMP attack. And that would also kill millions if that would be done globally between Russia and the US allies. So preventing beats curing, also preventing mutually assured destruction.
Something and regularly developed during joint exercises. They are always
saving the maximum number of human lives
and they pose no threat
to create a perfect society in which we all will live happily eternally. That's the idea.
The Republic of Belarus,
not a negative dystopian, totalitarian New World Order.
All of its obligations under international regional treaties on arms control. Incidentally, all information about the forthcoming military drills is fully available on the official site of the Republic of Belarus Defense Ministry. Just a few days ago, on the 28th of January, the President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, responding to questions, stated that war is only possible in two circumstances: if there is an attack on Belarus or if there is an attack on our ally, the Russian Federation. Responding to the different insinuations against Belarus regarding anything to do with the domestic Ukrainian situation, we'd like to remind you that Belarus is prepared to continue to provide all necessary assistance to settle the conflict in Ukraine. This includes through setting up all necessary conditions for the work of the trilateral group and for negotiations in any possible formats and options. Today, many people in the world are talking about the need to have broad dialogue on issues of international security. An initiative on holding this kind of dialogue under the conditional name Helsinki II. Such an initiative was put forward by the President of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, some years ago now, and this idea, unfortunately, has not yet been implemented. The Republic of Belarus sincerely wants a swift settlement of the regional crisis, purely on the basis of dialogue and mutual respect. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Belarus, and I give the floor to the representative of Poland.
Madam President, Madam Undersecretary General, Excellencies, Poland is grateful for convening today's meeting on the Security Council, as we are increasingly concerned with Russia's continuous large-scale military buildup on the border with Ukraine, both in the territory of Russia but also in the territory of Belarus, including continuous redeployments of troops, prepositioning of military hardware and offensive weapons. We cannot keep quiet because what is happening in our neighborhood constitutes a serious threat to international peace and security, reaching far beyond our region and continent. The current security situation in Eastern Europe unfortunately follows a pattern of precedents, with the Russian Federation being the destabilizing actor in the region at least since 2008 and the war in Georgia through 2014 and illegal annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. As we speak, the frozen conflicts in eastern Ukraine, in the Georgian breakaway regions of Skhin Valley and Abkhazia, and in the Transnistrian region of the Republic of Moldova are unresolved, undermining the stability and regional security of this part of the world. Madam President, we cannot keep quiet because what is happening in our neighborhood constitutes the outright violation of the fundamental principles enshrined in the UN Charter. Poland deeply adheres to the principles of international law, such as sovereignty and territorial integrity of states, the inviolability of frontiers, and non-use or threat of force. And we call upon all member states to act in the same spirit. We know very well from our country's history that a political order based on the spheres of influence brings no positive results. It is here in the United Nations where it is our duty to protect the principles of international law, strongly condemn any threat of use of force, and work together to dismantle spheres of influence in order to maintain peace. What is at stake today is not only the subordination of Ukraine and the creation of the so-called buffer zone in Eastern and Central Europe. The real threat is to shake the very foundation of the security architecture in Europe by undermining such tenets of international law as inviolability of borders and the freedom to choose one's own security arrangements, among others. Unfortunately, this may have a global impact and contribute to the deterioration of international security, not to mention the possible humanitarian crisis. And there are other revisionist powers which may follow the suit. Madam President, Poland deeply believes in the power of preventive diplomacy. Holding the chairmanship in office of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, we stand open to facilitate talks on the European security within the organization. OSCE can provide the right venue to discuss matters of concern because of being the broadest of the regional formats. We call for constructive engagement of all participating states in order to find a peaceful solution to the current crisis. Let there be no doubt that the current status quo is not a solution at all. Living in a constant fear of another frozen conflict is against the commitment of these United Nations to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors. With Winter Olympics just less than a week away, let us do whatever we can to maintain the Olympic peace in the Eastern Europe. And I thank you.
I thank the representative of Poland, and I give the floor to the representative of Lithuania.
Madam President, let me thank you for convening this meeting on such important issue and for granting an opportunity to speak. I am delivering this statement on behalf of the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and my own country, Lithuania. Firstly, let me reiterate our country's unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We strongly condemn the clear violation of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity by acts of aggression by the Russian armed forces since February 2014. We do not recognize and continue to condemn the illegal annexation of Ukraine's Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol by Russia. We remain concerned over the increasing militarization of the peninsula, the severe deterioration of the human rights situation there. Let me add, in this context, that we welcome the establishment of the International Crimean Platform launched at the kickoff summit that took place on 23rd August in Kiev, and support the implementation of its joint declaration. We invite other UN members to join this initiative as well. Madam President, the conflict in Ukraine has claimed around 14,000 lives, displaced 1.5 million persons, and has resulted in countless suffering on both sides of the contact line in eastern Ukraine. We reiterate our full support to the efforts towards peaceful and sustainable resolution of this conflict, namely in the Normandy format, the Trilateral Contact Group, and the OSCE, including its special monitoring mission to Ukraine. Yet, despite all international efforts, until now, we see little progress towards the resolution of this conflict. Ukraine's constructive approach has not been reciprocated by Russia. We condemn Russia's continued aggressive actions and threats against Ukraine and call on Russia to de-escalate the situation and to abide by international law. We call on Russia to immediately stop fueling the conflict by providing financial and military support to the armed formations it backs, and to withdraw the Russian military troops and materiel from the eastern border of Ukraine and Crimean Peninsula. Madam President, despite all diplomatic efforts, Russia further escalates and continues military deployment around Ukraine's borders. Moreover, Russian troops are deployed in Belarus as well. This adds up to the current escalation and is of direct concern to us. Kremlin continues to use a false narrative that Russia is forced to defend itself from a threat, even as the opposite is true. It is Russia who is threatening Ukraine and other neighbors by positioning over 100,000 troops. Russia is not a victim, as it attempts to portray itself. It is the aggressor, strengthening its security at the expense of others. By its own actions in the Georgian breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, the Transnistrian region, the illegal annexation of Crimea, Russia has contributed to a significant deterioration of security environment in Europe. We reaffirm full commitment to the core principles of international security enshrined in the UN Charter, founding documents of the OSCE, including the Helsinki Final Act and the Charter of Paris, and others. This includes, notably, the sovereign equality and territorial integrity of states, the inviolability of frontiers, refraining from the use of force. Their violation by Russia is an obstacle to a common and indivisible security space in Europe and threatens peace and stability on our continent. Times of limited sovereignty in Europe are long gone. Notions of spheres of influence have no place in the 21st century. States have freedom to choose or change their own security arrangements. No third country has a veto right over the sovereign choices of independent and democratic states. Madam President, in response to the recent tensions, the EU has made clear in the December and January European Council conclusions that any further military aggression against Ukraine will have massive consequences and severe costs, including restrictive measures to be coordinated closely with our transatlantic partners. Madam President, we call on Russia to respect principles of UN Charter, de-escalate, and engage in genuine dialogue. It is our duty as members of the UN to defend the rules-based international system. Violation of its fundamental principles will have the consequences for other parts of the world. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Lithuania. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
So, according to sources online, Biden is a Knight of Malta. I don't find the same about Putin. Famous Knights of Malta, Freemasons. So they have their lodges also in China and India. Freemasons. Policies and principles of the Knights of Malta. One, end of sovereignty for the United States and other countries, and of absolute property rights. That kind of fits in with you will own nothing. End of all gun rights, the new international economic order, world governments, New World Order. And that was also pursued by Adolf Hitler. The Neuordnung. People can check that wiki article on Nazi eugenics also. The redistribution of wealth and jobs calls for nations to trust the United Nations. No, trust no one, nothing is what it seems. Total disarmament. Well, the state is a legal person, the government is a legal person, you know. And the biggest genocides were perpetrated by governments, not by civilians. Anyway, that was the whole thing. So it's just to put the idea out there, prevent a cyber attack over the Ukraine. And it seems weird to me that Putin would try to invade them. I don't know much about it, but apparently he did that before in 2014. And another option is what would happen if they just let him invade Ukraine. And then it becomes part of Russia. Would that mean lots of changes for the country? Or would the baker man still be the baker man and everybody can live on, and then there is no world war, global cyber attack that kills millions and millions of people? More than the COVID-19 pandemic has, according to Klaus Schwab. So check that video if you haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna wear my other hoodie. So I thought, because Biden is the Knight of Malta, let's just put that in here. According to online sources, of course, there might not be any way to confirm or disprove it. Oh, he's also listed on this one. I think it's the bottom row there. Joe Biden, Giuliani, Tony Blair, the Bushes, Ted Turner, also person that wants to reduce the global population, supposedly. There are quotes of him about this. And you could argue that's illegal, public and open incitement to commit genocide. Because we're not overpopulated, it's all based on a lie anyway. Perhaps it's biblical, by way of deception thou shalt do war. So that's what they're trying to do, to deceive the people in the war. But where is my next illustration to use? Oh yeah, I was using the Cyberattack illustration. But perhaps it's good to listen to this first.
We want these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. The idea is we hold these truths self-evident. That all men and women. We haven't lived up to it completely, but we've always widened the arc.
So that doesn't give me much hope. But perhaps Biden is used more as a spokesperson and other people are in control. Is the idea. Okay. I'm looking for a particular illustration. Oh yeah. Let's go, Brendan. Florida. Protect Florida jobs. I think they could use the sentence as an example. It's done very well. And, well, the rest hasn't done well. As a matter of fact, we see the consequences of their disastrous actions of Joe Biden and others with their unlawful mandates. Because well, I'm not gonna talk about it right now. I did that in previous broadcasts and also wanted medical disclaimer with it, so I'm not gonna do that now. But let's end with the illustration that I started with. So that was just hosted by Israel, but there are 10 countries involved in that cyber pandemic exercise, Cyberattack. What Klaus Schwab called the comprehensive Cyberattack. And basically, I think it's a good idea to prepare for an EMP. I haven't done that either. I haven't got enough storable food. I'm not prepared enough for all this because I'm always trying to prevent this. That's our best option. Preventing all that horrible stuff is best. Preventing beats curing. So keep the global financial system and the internet alive. And I think they're going to do it anyway, that's clear. That they've thoroughly prepared this to get down to 500 million total global population and rule the world from Jerusalem with 2 fake messiahs, the Jesuit military order, in control of all intel agencies, based on the illustration on citizens.action.network on Facebook. So they control all these Freemasons, Knights of blah blah, etc. More about all this also in my previous broadcasts. Thank you all for watching. And, well, I think it's a good idea to show this illustration. Yes, well, comprehensive cyber attack. Oh, yeah. Sanctions now. Thank you. Guess for single ladies who would like one. And, see you next time on, Perfect Society. But I have to make my hand signal, so then I have to switch back to the other version again. Wonderful program, Snap Camera, freeware, so check it out. And perhaps it looks better with the hoodie on, the color, the shade is a bit... Alright. See you next time on Perfect Society. I'm Ulrich Hoffman. May peace be with you all. Until next time, dear YouTubers. We'll check if there's anything in the chat. Ooh, Free Assange, boycott banks, wrote a lot of stuff. It's a propaganda stunt for distraction. Anyone using a bank product is part of the problem. I'm sorry the propaganda distracted you. Have a nice day. Marker Movies wrote Cyberattack. Jouw stem leent zich wel goed voor Klaus Schwab imitaties. Coronavirus. Fijne avond man, ben altijd te laat. Nou, toch nog voorgelezen in de chat, dus bedankt voor je chatboodschappen. Thank you all for chat remarks, Free Assange, boycott banks and Marker Movies. See you next time on Perfect Society right here on YouTube. Everything is sabotaged. Everything's a scam. Based on the song by the Dutch rapper De Haan. So look out. Okay. Over.